fourth grade, I did the Regional Block Kids competition, which was hosted by the Women in Engineering. And it was a thing where you got some Legos, a rock, a string, some tinfoil, and you could make whatever you wanted. And so I somehow came up with the idea of making a solar-powered school. I had come up with my design for weeks ahead of time and implemented when I was there. And I happened to win for the state, and then was the first person to go on to win for Delaware. And that's really the first time that I realized that engineering was something that I liked to do. Before that, it was just something that I did to have fun, and I built things, and that was cool. And then fast forward to I loved science until I came here, and I still love science. And then senior year, I was trying to decide what science course to take and what I found the most passion for. And chemistry was really what I just thought it was like magic. And so I was so excited to learn more. And so I had two great teachers, Dr. Catone, who doesn't teach here anymore, and it was Dr. Johnson's first year here. And so he really then inspired me to go to the University of Delaware and pursue chemical engineering. And then after that, I had a great time there and really fell in love with engineering, and so I went on to become a civilian nuclear engineer for the Navy and worked down at the Norfolk Naval Shipyard on aircraft carriers, and just had an awesome job there and really got to learn a ton, but it wasn't ultimately the work environment that I was looking for. And so I started thinking about what aspects of my job I liked the most, and it was really the collaboration and the opportunity to teach and learn from others. Which made me then think that maybe teaching would be an interesting career. So then I reached out to St. Andrews, and it worked out. And it's been a great opportunity to continue to keep science in my life and to continue to get to do engineering, but in a collaborative and learning way, which has been great.
I think I got into science. I like to joke and tell people I got into science because I competed a lot with my sister, my older sister, and she was smarter than me. And the one thing I could do better than her was science. But really, the real reason was my middle school science teachers. I had a teacher, Mrs. Holloman, whose brother, Holloman Air Force Base, was named after, and she was an amazing physical science teacher. And the following year, I had probably my favorite teacher of all time, Charles D. Keck, Jr., who used to like to give F for the day. You might have heard me use that before. And then by the time I got to high school, really, I had some amazing teachers in high school, specifically my advisor at Mercersburg, Wirt Weinbrenner. And he really inspired me, not just to follow my passion into science, but to become a teacher as well. So even though I took a long detour in industry after I finished my doctorate, I knew that I was heading back to teaching at some time or another. And when my kids were in grade school, it seemed like the right time to do it, and that's how I ended up here at St. Andrews.
So when I was a kid, I was the kind of kid who loved everything in school. I loved history, I loved language, I loved music, I loved English, I loved math, and I didn't really get hooked on science like I am today until probably 9th or 10th grade, when I watched a documentary just at home on my sofa, and it was called The Elegant Universe by Brian Greene, and it was all about string theory. And I didn't really understand half of what I was watching. It just blew my mind, and I suddenly just started paying a lot more attention in science class. And we just happened to be starting a unit on astronomy, and so I got hooked, and I started studying astronomy and astrophysics like crazy, and I went into college to study astrophysics, and I was lucky enough while I was there to be able to take part in a few really, really cool experiences. So I did a summer internship while I was in college it was actually at NASA, and I was studying looking for regions in our galaxy where stars form. And then I did a master's program where I was doing research on supermassive black holes in galaxies and how that affects the stars that they produce. And I continued that research onto my PhD. And while I was doing my PhD, honestly, just as a poor student, just to get a bit of extra cash, I did some teaching on the side. And I was teaching undergraduates in the laboratory at my college. And I also was teaching astronomy masterclasses and giving planetarium shows at my local planetarium in London. And I just at some point realized that I was enjoying that a lot more than my research. It was just really exciting to me to be able to share my passion and my enthusiasm and my knowledge for science and for astrophysics as well as normal physics. And so I decided to make a career switch, and that's why I'm here today.
So I grew up in Delaware, went to William Penn High School, and was taught physics by the one and only Mr. Wellborn. We took AP Physics our senior year, me, my friend Jesse, and my friend Jess Paul. And we all were so touched and inspired by our physics teacher, Mr. Wellborn, that we all decided to study physics at the University of Delaware. So during those 4 years, we grew together, we studied together, we laughed together, we cried together, and I worked at the physics library during the last 2 years at the University of Delaware. And after working at the library, I ended up seeing that there was an opening position for a physics teacher at this school called St. Andrews, a school that I had never heard about even though I grew up in Delaware. And so I ended up finding myself here at this school. I got very lucky, and I'm really happy to be here.
So I've always loved science. From the time I was a kid, I loved science. I got to college and realized I wanted to major in science, and the area that I most liked was ecology and evolutionary biology. And so that's what I majored in, and when I did a thesis on that, I had to do a thesis, and I studied feral ponies off the coast of North Carolina, this one population. I realized that I love science, but I did not love field research in ecology. And so that sort of led me to medical school. I had always been exposed to medicine. My father was a physician, and so I ended up going to medical school and loved it. Finished that, got into ophthalmology, which is eye surgery, and loved it. I did cataract surgeries and glaucoma surgeries where you help reduce the pressure in the eye, and straightened eyeballs, children with crossed eyes, straightened eyeballs. Unfortunately, I developed a tremor and had to stop operating, and that made it hard to be an ophthalmologist. But so I stopped practicing at that point, but I've recently gotten back into thinking about health at the population scale, and I'm working on a master's in public health, where you think about disease rather than at the patient level, at the population level. And so I'm really enjoying that because I just love medicine and I love sharing it with everybody here. And so I'm trying to learn as much as I can and bring as much of it to you all as I can.
So I grew up in San Diego. I was outside all the time. I used to catch lizards. I used to catch butterflies. I used to catch fishes. I got really excited about fishing. That's what I did all the time. Fishing got me really excited about fishes. I remember as a little kid, I had a book from National Geographic called The Wondrous World of Fishes, and it was on my nightstand, and I would page through that every night. When I went off to college, I went to the University of San Diego, but I spent a lot of time at the Scripps Institute of Oceanography. They have a library, and I would just go through the stacks, reading papers about fishes. This all led me eventually to a place called Moss Landing Marine Laboratories. At Moss Landing Marine Laboratories, I ran into other people like me who were obsessed with fishes or marine mammals or seawater chemistry or satellite oceanography. It was really great. It was really transformative for me. At Moss Landing Marine Labs, I studied larval fishes, and so I went out in a small boat off Santa Cruz, California for 2 years, often in very heavy seas with very strong winds. In my research, I collected over 90,000 larval fishes and identified those. So my work was on the assemblage of larval fishes off Santa Cruz, California. That was more than 25 years ago, and I miss those days. It was really a lot of fun.
So I guess when I was younger, maybe, like in high school and college, physics was all about finding answers to me, and science was something that you did, like smart people did, and I felt smart because I got to do it, and I would get answers, and you needed big labs and equipment to work in. And I think in time, like I've come to realize science isn't any of those things. Science is about the questions that we ask. And, one of the greatest pleasures that I have is like when Maddie and I will go out on a bike ride and she'll just say, let's talk about physics. And we'll just talk about why does a bike, stay up when you're riding it, but it falls over if you're just holding it up. And the great thing there is like Maddie and I'm not telling Maddie the answers for those things. She's offering her ideas. And I'm realizing that's really science. Like how do we start to wonder something? How do we go about knowing what that is? And how do we know whether we're right? And the other thing I think about is we need more people asking questions and thinking about science in that way if we're going to solve some of the really big problems that are facing us. Because I think we could all benefit from asking more questions and being able to know our answers